and get around it. You'll go, think of something you were totally motivated to do, and they'll go, okay. And you don't accept that. You go, no, no, no. I mean, were you really ready to do it? Because if they don't look like it and they don't sound like it, it don't count. That's my theory. So you go back, see what you saw, that feeling, spin that feeling, go through spinning so they're familiar with it, so that when you start adding them together, because what we're doing now is making a new feeling. We don't even have a use for it yet. But we'll get to that, okay? This is just, see, the thing is first you have to realize every sensation that a human being is capable of becomes the palette on which we paint. Because, you see, most of the people that come to us have never explored the range of what their neurology is capable of. So they come in and they say to you things, they go, well, I just really, I have a trouble motivating myself to do things. And you have to look back at them and say, I fucking believe you. But it ain't going to be that way no more. I'm going to give you a good reason to do things. And they'll go, really? And you go, yeah, because I want you to. I like looking at clients. This is one of my favorite things to say to them. I go, look, I have a 100% success record. And if you think you're going to fuck it up, you're wrong. I'll kill you before I'll leave an uncured client. Think about it. Because I like it. They go, you're kidding. And I go, I don't kid. I'm such a liar, aren't I? But you see, it doesn't matter, because really you have to think about the fact that when you spend time with people communicating, your job is to be successful at it. Your job is not to be honest. If I was honest with them, I'd just say, you're fucked up, jump. You know? But before you jump, can I have your wallet? You know? I have to tell you, this is what happens if Richard takes people at their word. I went to a mental hospital, and it's actually kind of an old mental hospital, creepy fucking place. And I was asked to go in and work with autistic children. And these kids are really in bad shape. I mean, I went in, they have a whole padded place, and everything in the place has got foam rubber on it and duct tape. Because these kids were just sitting there banging their heads against things. And I mean, which shows you that probably being, what the fuck is going on? Steven's on fire. Is everybody's hearing things doing that? Yeah, I know. Well, can somebody like make it so it doesn't do that? Or at least turn the fucking thing off or something. What? Yeah. I'm sorry. Anyway, this is what happens if I start to get serious. Fucking electronic stuff. Anyway, if you can't understand me, then you're fucked. But since you don't know what I just said, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I went to this mental hospital, and I went in, and did some work with these autistic kids, and then this one guy tells me, he goes, look, because I got pretty good results with this one kid. I just sat down next to him and started describing everything he did. He was banging his head against the desk, and I said, keep banging. I said, now, 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 now. And the kid finally turned and looked at me like I was interfering with him. And I walked over to him, and I said, you know, you should try banging your head on this. This would be a lot better. And the kid like looked over at it and like considered it for a minute. But you see, that I consider a breakthrough. If somebody is not listening, and autistic kids really don't listen, but I started doing things like just moving in relationship to him. I started banging my head and then looking at him and smiling. And then I took the psychologist and started banging his head. And the autistic kid started laughing. And I anchored it, and then when he went to bang his head, I fired the anchor off, and he laughed, and he didn't do it. He took the psychologist and tried to bang his head. And the psychologist started asking me, he goes, so what's the point of this? He said, I don't understand. And I said, I believe you. But then he took me down the hallway and he said, let me show you how we do treatment with these kids. He brought me in this room and they had electric shock equipment. These kids were only 3, 4, 5, 6 years old and they were giving them electric shock. Now I have to tell you that I don't approve of this, that I consider this a form of torture. I don't consider this a form of treatment. That, that this is a way of getting out of having to do things yourself. That, yes, of course they stop banging their head for a while after you give them electric shock. But then if you hit them in the face with a fucking 5-pound sledgehammer, they wouldn't be doing it either for a while. In fact, if you threw them off the 3rd story of a building and broke both their legs, they wouldn't do it for a while. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for them. Now, we were sitting there, and the guy had this equipment, and I said, how does this work? And the guy said, well, you just turn this dial like this, and he said, and you take the panels, and you rub them together like this, and he said, and then you just put them on the side of their head for a couple of minutes. So I grabbed the panels, and I went like this, and the guy dropped to his fucking knees. Apparently, you're supposed to have these people insulated, too, before you do that. And the guy dropped down to his knees, and his eyes rolled back in his head, and I thought, gee, this works pretty good. And his colleague came running in the room and said, what's the matter? Because the guy had bit his tongue. Apparently, you put something in their mouth, too. And I said, he was just showing me how these worked. And I said, come here. And the guy said, what? I said, come here. And the guy said, did you touch him with those? And I said, yeah, and I'm going to get you, too. And he said, why are you doing that? And I said, I heard you did this to children, so it must be good for you. And he said, you have to be qualified to use those. I said, no, I did work just fine. I said, the guy, look at him. I said, he's not trying to torture children. I said, and I could get you to stop, too. I said, if I can't do it with those, I can do them with these. And the guy said, what? And I said, if I ever hear of you fucking using these on kids again, I'm going to wait outside this fucking hospital. I'm going to jump you. I'm going to kick the crap out of you. And I'm going to beat you into a coma. And the guy said, is this what you consider training? And I said, yes. I said, if you guys can't find something better to do than to electrocute children, excuse me, I said, I think that you really need to rethink things. That I think that this is a very bad way to go about it. Because you don't need to make people feel worse. What you need to do is to give them something to pay attention. And, they found out, for example, if they just let the TV on, autistics would become dependent on it. But in fact, if they changed the programming so that they switched TV programs at a certain time, the autistic kids would go insane because they became dependent upon regularity. Now, to me, this meant that what do we need? Videotapes. We need to change it every day. So that what do they expect? New things. So that they start looking for what the new thing is rather than becoming dependent upon repetition to feel good. Once we set up a program where everything changed, instead of serving them breakfast at the same time, we changed it every morning so that it was always constantly different, so that they began to look for difference rather than similarity. And what happens is if their sense of certainty is based on the lack of similarity, then what happens is they start looking for difference as a way to feel okay, not for similarity as a way to feel okay. It's not easy. It requires that the entire staff of the entire facility actually plan. Because you know how easy it is to say we'll serve all the kids breakfast at 7:30 every day for the rest of their life. Because if they don't do different things, these kids will spend the rest of their life hospitalized because they won't be learning to cope with the world. I'm sorry, last night I was in a restaurant with some of you. You guys remember that? Right? And if I had depended that they were actually going to bring me my meal when they said so, I would have died, right? Because they brought my wife food and they brought me nothing. And there were other people sitting at the table. There were people that came way afterwards who sat down at the table. They served them food. Me, I could have died of starvation at this table. And then all of a sudden, they brought me all of the food. They brought my hors d'oeuvres, my dinner, everything all at once, right? Well, the thing is that if you're really going to be disappointed because people in restaurants don't do exactly what they're supposed to, and that the chef doesn't cook all the meals at exactly the same time, you're going to be neurotically unhappy. But if you just expect that shit happens, well, then you'll probably live a pretty dependable life. Because as far as I can turn, I went in a Woolworths yesterday, and my wife bought 3 things, And there was no one at the counter but us. We walked up, I gave this woman the 3 things, and she looked at them, and then she set them down, and she walked over and started talking to somebody. Now, if I was a short-tempered person, which I am, I would have yelled at her. But I know if you yell at people, they won't move any faster. So I thought, well, gee whiz, I have to have a way of getting her attention. And so, and I knew she didn't speak English, so I could say anything in English. It wouldn't make a difference. So what I did is I started hitting the cash register, like this. And the woman went over and went, don't touch that. I'm the only one who can touch that. And she added everything up and sent us out. See, if you're looking for a solution, you have to find out where do people get huffy about having it their own way. Even an autistic will be like that. Now, if you train autistics to depend upon regularity, then they will demand regularity. But if they depend upon irregularity, when regularity occurs, then they'll just get suspicious. They'll go, my breakfast came at 7:30 again. Now, if you can force people into sensory acuity, I knew if I started messing with the cash register, that woman was going to come over and stop telling jokes to this guy, or whatever she was trying to get a date or something. I don't know. I don't speak German, so I have no idea what was going on. But I know what wasn't going on. And the more she wasn't there, the more it wasn't going on. Now, the thing is, as soon as I violated her domain, right, then it became something where she wanted to be in charge. The same thing is true about the autistics. The same thing is true about schizophrenics. I spoil schizophrenia for people, and I'll go to any length to do it. I think the greatest length I ever did was when I had a guy who was hallucinating snakes, scared out of his mind. He was actually head of a corporation, not a large corporation, but a corporation doing about $30 million a year. And one day in his office, he just freaked out, and he told and he had an episode of this, and he kind of alternated between being quasi-catatonic and then quasi-absolutely scared out of his mind, because snakes would appear everywhere, and they'd be crawling all over the place, and he would just scream. And so in the infinite wisdom of the people in the mental hospital, what did they do? They strapped him down. Now, I don't know about you, but my experience was snakes were coming everywhere, being strapped down would be about the least helpful thing you could do. Just think about it. And the psychiatrist who was strapping him down is the one that told me this. He said, well, you know, he has these episodes. He said, most of the time he's relatively okay. And he just sits in a wheelchair and he won't say much of anything. You know, and he said, I've had hour-long sessions with him where he doesn't say a word. And I'm thinking to him, I'm going, you're just not going about this right. I can get anybody to talk about anything. And I said, you want to see this guy talk? Let me show you something. So I went out and I took a lunch, and I was walking up the street and thinking to myself, how can I get this guy's attention? And I saw a store that said reptiles. And something about it attracted me. So I went over, and the guy had a big barrel of rubber snakes. It was huge. It was this big, and it had all these rubber snakes in it. And I went in and I said to the guy, I said, can I rent these snakes? And the guy said to me, he said, no, he said, these snakes are for sale. He said, they're only $2. I said, yeah, but I don't need them for that long. I just want them for a couple of hours. And I said, but I want them all. And the guy said to me, he goes, well, what are you going to do with them? And I said, I'm going to cure a schizophrenic. He has a fear of snakes, and I'm going to put an end to it all at once. And he said, can I watch? And I said, okay. And he said, then you can use my snakes. And he said, have you got a truck? And I said, no. He said, I have a truck in the back. We'll just load the barrel in there. And he said to me, he said, would you like a cup of tea? And I said, well, okay. That sounded very friendly. So we went behind the store, and he had a little house. And I sat down in a nice big wingback chair like this. And I was sitting there, and there was another chair like this, and there was a lamp. And it looked like a snake. You know, it had like a snake wound around it, only it wasn't part of the lamp. It was a 16-foot boa constrictor. And I thought it was part of the lamp. I looked at it and I said, geez, that looks very realistic. And then it looked over at me like this. And a voice inside my head went, oh, shit. And it came right off the lamp and started wrapping itself around me. And I thought, if I move, it could bite me. And if I don't move, it will bite me. And I said, hey, excuse me. And I said, your lamp is getting kind of personal. And he yelled out from the other room, he says, don't worry about it, that's Alice. And I looked and I went, Alice? And the snake went. And he said, yeah. He said, I've had Alice since she was a little worm. I've raised her by hand. He said, she loves people. He said, shall we bring her along? And I thought, yes. So the barrel of snakes, 2 pythons, and Alice all went to the mental hospital. I went into the shower at the mental hospital, and I filled the bottom of the shower with the rubber snakes. It looked like the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Do you remember that, when he looked down and all those snakes were everywhere? Looked just like that, on the walls, hanging everywhere. We put the pythons up on the porcelain edges of the things and wrapped Alice around the faucet. So Alice was, because it had a big long faucet thing that came down from about 12 feet, and Alice wrapped around it, and it was nice and warm. Turned the shower on, put this guy in the wheelchair, and rolled him in. Now, since this guy kept freaking out periodically, they actually had this guy with these things that were, so he was kind of strapped into the chair, so he couldn't like move. And they brought him in, and usually somebody would give him a sponge bath. But I just kind of rolled him in and left him there. And walked out of the room, and for a couple of minutes, he actually didn't notice. He was like sitting there, and the water was hitting him, and he had a smile, and then he went like this. And the entire stall was just oozing the snakes everywhere. And I was outside the door, and I gave each of the 2 psychiatrists that helped me do this a towel. And they said, what's this for? I said, to put over your mouth. And like this, because when this guy yelled, it was a yell from the bowels of the earth. This guy yelled, snakes! Like that. And then I know he had to have looked up, because he went up 2.5 octaves. And he went, snakes! And he was looked up, and Alice, of course, went, oh boy, a person, and started lowering herself down. And I looked through the glass thing, and Alice is hanging down by the tip of her tail, trying to get onto this guy, going, oh boy, a human, I love humans. And this guy looked up, and there was a big python sitting on top of either one of the tile things on the side. So this guy is sitting there in 1,000 snakes. And he's yelling, snakes! And he can't move because he's strapped in. And I'm going, just wait, wait. I said, I'll get my point across. And the psychiatrists are going, he's freaking out. And I said, that's good. I said, he does that anyway, doesn't he? And they said, oh, well, yeah. I said, see, we're just pacing him. I'm just trying to establish rapport. So I walk in, and I look at him, and the guy looks at me, and he goes, snakes! And I said, yes. I said, now, you tell me where the hallucinated snakes are, where the fake snakes are, and where the real snakes are, and I'll take you out of here. Otherwise, I'm leaving. This is what's referred to as a serious fucking double bind. So the guy looks at me, and he looks down, and he looks up at Alice, and he goes, a real snake? He looked at the python and went, real snake. He looked down, and he went, rubber snake. And he looked over at the wall where there was a nothing, and he went, hallucinated snakes. And I went, you're right. And I wheeled him out. And I sat him in the other room, and I said, would you like to talk? And he went, and I started to wheel him back in. And he went, okay. This is what we refer to as really establishing rapport. So I sat down and I said, look, at some time you were at work and suddenly you started hallucinating snakes. Were they just like the hallucinated ones? And he went, yeah. And I said, are you scared of those hallucinated snakes? He went, no. And he looked at me and he went, real snakes? And I went, yeah. And the other guy went in and he got Alice and he brought Alice out, and Alice was wrapped all around him, and Alice really liked him, was kissing him on the cheek and stuff. And he says to the guy, he goes, would you like to hold Alice? And the guy goes, no. So I pulled the straps off of him, and I said, it's okay. I said, what better way to get over your fear and get back to your life than to overcome your fear? I said, I wouldn't be holding the pythons. They can bite. And the guy goes, they would never bite. And I said, pythons in the wild will bite. I had one bite a Jeep once. I mean, literally. But it was about 6 feet tall. I was in Africa, and this motherfucker came up and just spit on the wheel and attacked the side. He put a dent in the side of the Land Rover. I mean, you know, this thing thought it could beat a Land Rover. It was not right, but it's hard to convince it. I backed up, and it came down the road and attacked the Land Rover again. It was really a mean snake. I mean, I would have hated to meet this thing if I wasn't in the Land Rover. I started thinking about the fact that it had a canvas roof. You know, I mean, this thing was really in a bad mood. I don't know what happened. You know, the the wife spent too much money or something. You know, went out and bought a snake hat and snake shoes. But anyway, I tell you what here, what I want you to do is, take a 10-minute break, okay, get yourself some coffee, get ready, get in a good mood, get a little oxygen, walk around a little bit, then, and find yourself a partner. And then I want you to sit down, and I want you to take 4 new feelings, and I want you to put them together into one. We'll talk about later what you do with this. Because you see, in essence, it's not really different than what I did with him. I wanted him to be scared for the last time. Because I wanted him to start to have a new sensation where he sorted out. Because until he can tell hallucinated things from fake things from real things, he's going to be in that mental hospital for the rest of his life. And it's not any different than the clients that come in that believe their depression is real. It's no different than a snake. If they believe that every day is misery and that they can't feel good and they have to live in existential crisis, they're hallucinating just as badly as the guy who hallucinates snakes. The only difference is it's easier to get the guy with the snakes when I started because I could use snakes to sort it out. But when you start sorting out which things are fun and which things are misery in life, which things you're going to like, I mean, people like dragging string through the water, hoping fish can find it. There are people that jump out of airplanes for fun. Think about it. They're not even broken airplanes. They just go, oh, shit, I think today I'll go out and put a parachute on and jump out of a fucking airplane. Ah! And they're not even suicidal. They don't think they can get hurt. Every once in a while they do, though. I just had a client recently whose parachute didn't open until he got almost next to the ground. It opened at the last minute. He broke both his feet and both his ankles. And he told me, he says to me, he says, I want you to help me. He said, I have a fear of going out and jumping again. And I said, double that feeling. And then double it again, and then slap yourself across the face and say, this is fucking unnecessary. You could have just as much fun playing miniature golf with your kids. It's your body chemistry creating the fun, not the falling. I said, you should be able to jump off the curb and have the same thrill. You know, I said, you don't have to jump out of an airplane to have a good time. I mean, Jesus, if you have to go to that extreme to have a good body sensation, you're just not going about it right. You know, I'm sure it's all well and fine, you know, to watch the earth crashing towards you at 32 feet per square second. But if you think it keeps accelerating, that means that the higher up you are, the faster it goes. And this guy's skydiving. He's not like jumping out and letting the chute open and looking at the sights. You know, this guy's like going, flying down there. He told me that he jumped with 6 of his buddies, and they held hands, right? And that they were trying to do this again, only their chutes opened, and his didn't. So they all went out and held each other's hands, and suddenly, kapop, all these chutes open, and his chute doesn't open. So he went like this and pulled the emergency chute, and the whole thing came off and flew off into the distance. And I'll tell you, that's got to be the point at which your voice inside your head goes, I'm fucked. You know, you look down and you don't see the earth, your life goes before you, and your friends are looking, going, Jesus, he's falling kind of fast. You know, they're going, oh, better pull that chute open. In the meanwhile, it's going ning, 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 like this. And he was lucky. He just caught the wind and pop, opened at the last minute, or he would have been dead. He did this for a hobby. Now, and he wanted to go back. Think about that. So if human beings can think about, well, I'll do something totally suicidal. There are people now jumping off of tall buildings. Since that Pan Am building thing, they're now selling all the people who work in tall buildings these little parachute packages. And when they sell, no, this is the worst part. So I'd like to have one of those in my desk. But people are now going out on the weekends in San Francisco and in New York and practicing jumping off of office buildings with a little tiny parachute. So they'll be prepared for when a plane flies into the side of the building. Well, that's all good in theory, except if you're in the office the plane lands in. A parachute isn't going to do you any good at all. You know, that you just got to really put your concentration on, like going, which side of the building should I have my office on? That'd be more of a practical thing than, gee, should I have a parachute or not? And then going, well, I'll practice. I'll pretend as if a plane flew into the building and then act as if I'm on fire and jump out of the window. To me, you've got to be able to have more of a sense of security. See, none of us can plan on bad things happening in the universe. And, you know, I think it's a terrible thing what happened to all of those people. I think it would have been worse to be in the plane than to have been in the building. But I don't think either one was really the good place to be. And I'm sure the guy panhandling on the street, you know, is really had to reconsider where he was panhandling. That, you know, that as the flames came crashing down and killed homeless people, which I'm sure they didn't count. They only counted the people that were working there. The homeless that were down there going, have you got a quarter? You know, and next thing you know, a plane drops in their cup. You know, that's got to really suck, you know. They go, no, just a quarter will be fine. You know, that these kinds of tragedies, things like this happen, and we've got to do something about it. I happen to think that you know, the difference between me and George Bush is I would have been thinking neutron bomb. You know, if we can't find bin Laden, I would have evaporated half the mountainside. But then I have more of a temper. Fortunately, he's president and I'm not. But then if I had been president, I wouldn't have waited till the Pan Am building. I would have gone after these guys because we knew about them before, and I think it was stupid. This guy tried to blow up the Pan Am building once before, and we knew about it, and we didn't do anything about it. We waited. What, do we think he wasn't going to do it again? I mean, excuse me. You know, it's like anybody who's that much of a lunatic that thinks it's a good idea to blow up a building with 25, 30,000 people in it, you know, isn't going to go, well, you know what? That didn't work. I won't try it again. I mean, what were they thinking? Where is this CIA? They're supposed to be so fucking intelligent. It's supposed to be an intelligence agency, isn't it? You know, you know, it seems to me they should have had the intelligence to say, well, maybe we should kill this guy. You know, because sometimes there are people that are evil enough, I just don't think we should put up with their shit. Because they never, you know, they're compulsives, every one of them. You know, and not only that, this guy is when you see the movies, this guy is smacked out of his head. This guy's taking heroin. There's no doubt about it. This guy's snorting that crap. Or at least smoking a lot of opium because his eyes are like saucers, right? And his speech is totally slurred. And even when they did the interview with his son on CNN, his speech, the guy couldn't even talk. He was just whacked out of his head. And people whacked out of their head on drugs are not going to make good decisions. I mean, that's all there is to it. You're going to go, well, do you think we should blow up the Pan Am building? And he'd go, wow, cool, yeah. Go ahead. Oh, you need $2 million here. I'll just sell some more heroin and get it back. I mean, you know, I mean, to me, that'd be one of the first things that I would be doing. I'd be out there, I'd napalm those poppy crops, you know. I mean, to me, that, you know, that these, last thing we need to do is to make these guys richer. And I would probably decriminalize drugs in most of the civilized world, because I just think it's a bad idea to make it into a criminal activity, make criminals rich, and make it so that people have to commit crimes, fill our jails up. I think all of that's stupid. I think what we should do is educate people about drugs when they're young, and make the drug education so that it makes sense. Because they gave me that stuff in high school, and these people didn't know anything about drugs. You can't educate people about drugs with stupid, scary films. They showed us pictures of everything going out of focus, because that's all they could do with the camera. We saw this movie, LSD 25, and afterwards everybody went, wow, let's get some LSD. It seems like so much fun, you know? And then they showed us movies about syphilis where people got X's across them. I mean, you know, that has nothing to do with syphilis. If they'd have showed us pictures in mental hospitals of people going crazy out of their mind and wheezing things, we might have built a revulsion for it. But they made it sound like it was something we should be trying to get. The name of the movie was called Let's Get Clap Happy. That's a bad name. But anyway, you guys go ahead, take a 10-minute break, spend 10 minutes apiece, and meet me right back here in the middle of somewhere. So anyway, how did you guys do since you're here? Did you manage to get through this and make it so you blended the four feelings together? Okay. Can you still do the feeling? The new one you made. By the way, this is yes, this is no. You guys are just looking at me in a deep trance going, I was hoping you made a more exciting feeling than that. See, it should be as simple as 1, 2, 3. What happened to these other people? Did they like fucking die in the middle of the exercise or something? These chairs were full this morning. What? You think so, huh? You guys are pretty spaced out already. They must be like through the floor. They're in there like staring at the carpet, counting the things, the threads. Going, do you think it's 200 per square inch or 300? I bought some sheets that I don't like to use the sheets in hotels and stuff most of the time. This place is pretty clean, but the place in London, I think the sheets were built the same time as the city was founded. So I went out and I bought sheets, and the woman said to me, she said, do you want 300 threads per square inch or 200 threads per square inch? And I said, I want them to be clean. And she said, well, they're all brand new. And she said, but it's really important. She said, this is Egyptian cotton. And I said, how do you know that? And she said, well, it says right on it. And I said, yeah, but you can write anything. I said, you really think this was made in Egypt? And she goes, no, they weren't made in Egypt. They were made in the north of England. And I said, then they're not Egyptian. I said, they're North English. And she said, no, but it's Egyptian cotton. And I said, did the cotton come from Egypt? And she said, no, it came from North England. And I said, then how can you call it Egyptian? And she said, well, it's the kind of cotton it is. And I said, oh. I said, so if you call something something, it becomes that. And so I pulled out a notepad and I pulled off 4 sheets of paper and I said, this is English money. And she said, no, it's paper. And I said, no. I said, it was Egyptian, but now it's English. That a lot of people think that if you name things, that you understand them. This is one of the things that I find to be kind of repulsive about the earth. That when I started out 30 years ago, people thought if you had a name for something, you were done. That they would say, oh, this person is a paranoid schizophrenic. When I started my work, people would come in and they would say, I'm a visual. And I would say, no, you're not. You're a human. And they'd go, well, no, I'm a visual. My work is not designed to be diagnostic in nature. It's not what it's for. The only reason we talked about the fact that people visualize, even if you don't visualize, you probably are, and you just don't know it. That doesn't mean that you are an auditory person. It means that there is something new for you to explore. Because my work is designed to get people to use more of their brain in more ways. And it's not that you are a visual. People visualize at certain times and not others. And it's really about getting you to extend the range of what's possible. It's not that you are a kinesthetic, it's that everyone can become more of a kinesthetic. The things that we're doing here are about learning to extend the range of how you use your kinesthetics. Because see here, now we have a whole new feeling and we have nothing to do with it yet. I mean, just think about it. Now we made up a new feeling. Now what we have to do is to get that feeling to be attached to behavior. Now the feeling that you made up hopefully is made out of the components that I was talking about. So it has built into it something which feels good, something which can motivate you, something which makes it so it's not stressful. It has something built into it to make it so that it's something that is attached to an activity. Now this is the point. Now you all remember the feeling that you made? Okay, this is yes. Okay. Now, hopefully you should be able to just start it now. If I went 1, 2, 3, everybody starts spinning the good feeling. Okay, can you do that? Spin it faster. Go ahead and just let it spin. It should be spinning isometrically. I know a lot of you had trouble with that word isometric. It just means it's the same amount on both sides of the body. So if it starts here, then start it here too. So it goes like this. So it spins the same. Because if you make everything on one side of your body, you get lopsided. You know, I just want you to be balanced, that's all. It's to keep it so that everything is in balance. Spin it faster and faster. Now close your eyes and ask yourself the question, where would this be useful? Right? Where would you rather feel like this than the way you feel now? See, because the answer to where this feeling should be is something that exists inside of each of you. Because if you start to see what you would see if you were in the place on this planet where it would be a useful feeling to have. Would you like to feel this way when you're at work? Would you like to feel this way when you're playing miniature golf? Would you like to feel this way so you don't jump out of an airplane? Unless the airplane is broken? You know, I mean, to me, if you begin to think of where you're going to have the feeling, because you see, it's no different than what I wanted to do as an outcome with autistic children, as opposed to what the, quote, doctors wanted to do. The doctors wanted to make them manageable, and I wanted to make them so that they could cope. Because it seemed to me the most important thing to do with people, And I've felt this way for 30 years. I don't think that mental hospitals are a particularly good idea. I know that they're a necessity because some people lose it so bad that they'll hurt themselves or other people. And some people become so dysfunctional that, they'll jump off of bridges, they'll do all kinds of weird stuff. I mean, I live where I can see the Golden Gate Bridge, and every year people jump off the Golden Gate Bridge because they think that's the best choice. And I have to tell you, that it's not. And I mean, just straight out of the gate, suicide is a really lousy solution because once you're dead, then you can't really rethink things. And it makes it extremely difficult, especially if you jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. There are people in San Francisco who were jumping off of the top of the Bank of America building. They finally had to make it so you can't go out on the roof. 52 stories and nothing down below but concrete. Not a good choice. But yet some people went, this is the best choice I have. They became so desperate, they took bad feelings and started spinning them so they got out of control. Now, they took some of these suicidal people and they take them to a mental hospital, pump them full of Thorazine, and I'll tell you, this doesn't help you to think any clearer either. That taking large amounts of drugs may make you manageable in a mental hospital. It may be better for the staff than having you scream your bloody head off. But you see, the thing is I don't think that it helps you because you're not going to be able to carry Thorazine with you and take it so that if you decide you're going to be suicidal, you go, well, shall I jump off the bridge or shall I shoot myself up with Thorazine? This still doesn't seem to me to be the best choice that people have. People have to learn to manage their kinesthetics just like everything else. That the schizophrenic who was seeing the snakes was somebody whose pictures were out of control. Now, you can take people like one of the most brilliant people that ever lived, his name was Tesla. Tesla holds more patents than any living human being in the history of patenting things in the U.S. and Europe. And the rest of the world don't really pay attention to patents that much. Take it from me, my work is published in countries and I get nothing from it. I actually have more books published in Russia than I have in the United States, because some of my work in the United States is classified, and you're not allowed to publish it because it's work I did for the government. However, it's published in Russia. Think about that. It's apparently not classified very well. That there are things that I have no copies of, and people came from Russia and showed me copies in English, published in Russia. It's just totally ludicrous, but of course I get no royalties from it. That's a whole different story because they don't adhere to the international copyright laws. But Tesla was the guy that came up with things like the fluorescent light bulb. Tesla invented alternating current. He invented the generator. Actually, when he worked for Edison, he invented the light bulb. Edison just took credit for it. That Tesla was a person who was very good, and he was also, when he wrote his biography, he was also very good at knowing how he did this. He actually just created in his mind, he actually could take an electric motor, the design for electric motor, he could put together a real motor, and he would put together one in his mind. And he would run the one in his mind for a month, and then disassemble the one in his mind. And when you disassembled the real one that had run for a month, the wear and tear would be in exactly the same place. That the models that he constructed in his mind ran in real time and actually were exactly the same as things on the outside. He had a set of tools in his mind by which he assembled things, just like the ones he... Hi, dear. Am I poor yet? Getting nice coat. Yeah, I'll be done in about 10 minutes. Okay. I've heard about outside. I've been there once. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Anyway, Tesla you can see the value she places on my work, huh? Is it Richard work or a pair of socks? She's a very practical girl. Nice coat, though, huh? I have to admit, she has a good taste. It's that ring, boy. Some of you saw the ring. The ring was really nice, wasn't it? Huge, though, boy. Thing is like this big, I thought I wore big rings, but, she wears You know, it's a giant piece of thing and has gold in it and everything. It turns out it isn't actually a jewelry store. The guy is an artist. And he's apparently quite famous. He has a book out and everything. But he just made some jewelry. And I'm glad it was the ring, though, because, boy, the earrings. Jesus Christ. 7,000 marks. Ow! That's a lot of money for a pair of fucking earrings, you know. But, you know, because the lady in the store had on these earrings, and my wife said, oh, those are beautiful. She said, oh, here, try them on. You know, and as they went by, I saw that price tag, and my heart just stopped cold. It went, like this, and I had to, like, shock myself, you know, and get myself going again. I mean, see, I can see where the electric paddles are useful for that. But as a way of thinking clearer, I don't know. It's one thing to start your heart again. It's another to say, gee, I'm not thinking too well. You know, like that. I wonder if these guys in the emergency ward, every once in a while, if they're feeling depressed, if they just take those paddles and go, you know, and they go, gee whiz, I'm thinking differently. I bet you would be. I stuck my finger in a wall socket accidentally one time and got a shock, and I was thinking different for about 30 seconds there, I'll tell you. You know, I was thinking, get your finger out of the fucking wall socket. But anyway, Tesla actually created alternative universes and then went and lived in them. He imagined what it would be like if we had a machine that everybody flew in every day. And he went and he would get in the machine and he would fly around. And then in his imagination, he got out and he actually disassembled the motors that ran it. And as it turns out, he designed, before airplanes, a jet engine. And in fact, it would have worked perfectly, except for one thing. They used to believe that gravity went down and air pressure went like this, and it doesn't. It goes like this. It comes in at an angle. If he'd have had that angle right, we would have started flying with jet engines and not propellers. He was a very, very creative man, and he's responsible for lots of the wonderful things that make our lives so much easier. Because I don't know about you, I think electric lights are really cool. I just like the idea you can go, the light goes on. I mean, you know, if people could do that inside their head, that would even be nicer. That guy lost his manual on that one. It slipped right out of his hands. He goes, whoop, the light came on. Damn, the manual's gone. Now, the thing that I want you to be able to do is to realize that whatever you thought about in your mind, if you start going like this, you start taking the feeling and spinning it, thinking about what you'd see if you were in that activity, these things will automatically become associated together. It's as simple as 1, 2, 3. Now, what this means is if you can make up one new feeling and you can associate it with something, it means that you can begin to reconstruct most of the things in your life. Now, the other thing is if you make new feelings about what you're going to feel like, it will automatically start creating for you new internal strategies. If when you look at things, for example, I was just talking to Chris here, and he was telling me that one of the people that I used as a demonstration subject, I installed an art strategy that's one that's used by a guy named Larry Rivers. And he's dead, too, now. You know, what can I say? Everybody I work with, dead. That's why it's not good. I won't elicit your strategies. You guys will have long lives. But the strategy that Larry Rivers used, I installed in this guy who had never done any artwork except when he was a kid. And, you know, he didn't feel he was artistic. And he sat on the stage, and I installed the strategy. But in order to make that strategy work, the first thing I had to do was to install new feelings in him. Because when he looked at art supplies, he automatically felt bad. This was done to him by some third-grade teacher. Some teacher, when he was young, looked at him and went, "You're not artistic." And he went, "Oh." And then whatever he made, you know, like the 5 other kids made some junky. And they looked at their thing and went, "Yours is bad. Theirs is good. Yours is bad. You're not artistic." Ooh. And here you are, a fucking adult, and you're still acting like this teacher made any fucking sense. Like you can tell who's artistic in the 3rd fucking grade. Excuse me, everything 3rd graders do look like some Picasso. I'm sorry. You know, Picasso never got out of the 3rd grade. But, you know, I still like his stuff. You know, my wife found a Picasso plate in a garage sale for 75 cents. You know, I came home and almost put a cigarette out in it. You know, boy, I lost a finger that day, let me tell you. she's looking through the books to see how much it's worth, you know, and I come home and I go, "What are you doing, dear?" So I don't smoke anymore now. I'm not allowed to. You want to get cured of smoking, you should have somebody come after your hand with a cleaver. That'll pretty much do it. But the thing is here's this lady sitting back there, and if you begin to start to think about art supplies and spin the new feeling, what's going to happen is it opens up possibilities. And this is what's so important for human beings. Because I know a lot of my work is about remedial things. We get people to get over their fears. We get people to stop having phobias. We get people so they can get on the airplane and fly. You know, we get people out of their depression. But you see, that's not the important part of what I do. The important part of what I've done in the past 30 years is making it so that you can really open up a wide range of possibilities. So that you can look at things that used to be just say no, and you never tried, never found out what you're capable of. Even while Chris was sitting here, he was going, well, you know, I see people playing one keyboard with one hand and another keyboard with another hand. I have 30 keyboards I use simultaneously. They're all hooked together. And, you know, and I can play 3 or 4 keyboards at the same time and get things moving on them. They have little sequencers, so they'll repeat what you play. And you can build a wall of sound. It's a great time to be a musician. But you see, everybody in this room is capable of being a musician now. And every sound that exists can be part of music. We have these great things called samplers. And I go out and sample sounds. We have the ducks from here. You know, the ducks out there, the ones sticking their butts in the air, and then they come up and go, quack, quack. Right? We have ducks and beautiful sounds from birds and railroad trains and the wind and the sound of rain on a roof. All of these things become something that you can use to make music externally, but also internally. Because while you're rotating this feeling, you can put any sound with it that you want, any sound a human can make, in fact, any sound that exists. Because if you make excitement inside yourself, when you look at these tasks, the things, because I know every one of you in here is capable of writing poetry, writing prose. Every one of you is capable of becoming a creative chef and making things. You have taste buds. You'll know what tastes good, and it's really easy because you won't be vomiting. I know I've made some things that sounded like they'd be good, and they just weren't. In fact, one of the people I used as a demonstration with this thing where I installed a painting strategy was sitting there, and while he was painting, he said to himself, you know, when I was a kid, I used to paint by numbers. And he was writing, he's a Hindu guy, he was writing a cookbook. And suddenly it came to him, all in a moment. He flashed, he said, why don't we have cooking by numbers? And so he puts out these little things, and it's WW Cook by Numbers. They're little kits, and you can make Indian food. And it makes you instantly a good Indian chef. If you like Indian food, I recommend you hop on the web and get a couple of these. They're absolutely fabulous. It's a little booklet and little things of herbs. And they tell you, you go out and buy the potatoes, and then you cook them the way he says, and you drop the herbs in, and everything works, just like painting by numbers. See, good ideas are something that come by virtue of the way you feel when you're thinking about things. Because if you don't feel good, you won't come up with good ideas. It's just the way it works. But I tell you what, let's take let's see, it's 12:30. Tell you what, why don't you come back here again at 2:15? Take an hour and 45 minutes, get some air, take that good feeling and keep it spinning, and see if you don't get some good ideas about things that maybe you haven't given yourself a chance to try. Because I got news for you. If you can do this, you are smarter than you thought you were. Because it's a lot smarter to feel good than it is to feel bad. See you guys in a couple hours.